Welcome back to the deep dive. Today is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. And I have to say, looking at the date on the calendar this morning, it really hit me.
Yeah,
We are coming up on 30 years, 3 full decades since the event we are about to discuss took place.
it is hard to believe. It feels like a story that has been permanently, etched into the cultural consciousness, doesn't it?
It really does.
It hasn't faded the way other cases from the 90s have. It feels just as present, just as confusing, and, well, just as debated today as it was in 1997.
Not at all. And honestly, it's a heavy one. We are talking, of course, about the killing of JonBenét Ramsey,
Boulder, Colorado, Christmas, 1996.
a case that, despite 30 years of scrutiny, documentaries, books, internet sleuthing, it technically remains an open homicide investigation.
It's the ultimate cold case, and I think that's what keeps pulling people back in, the sheer fact that it's still unsolved.
It is, and I think for most people, myself included, you have these sort of flashes of imagery when you hear the name JonBenét.
Oh, absolutely.
You think of the pageant videos, the tiara, the parents on CNN, the tabloid covers in the grocery store checkout line. It feels almost like a movie.
It feels fictionalized.
Exactly. But today, our mission is to strip all of that away.
We have to. We are putting aside the tabloids, the rumors, and the made-for-TV movie dramatizations.
Yeah.
We are going back to the hard stack, as we call it.
The raw data.
The autopsy report, the police files, the ransom note analysis, the legal rulings, and the DNA reports. We want to look at the raw data that the investigators were actually looking at.
Because when you actually look at the raw evidence, it doesn't make things simpler. I mean, you'd think it would, but it makes them infinitely more confusing.
That's the paradox of this case right there.
You assume that peeling back the layers will reveal the truth, but in this case, it just reveals more contradictions.
That's it. Usually, more evidence leads to a clearer picture. It converges on a suspect. But here, the evidence seems to argue with itself. You have physical evidence that just screams intruder.
Screams it!
And then you have behavioral and circumstantial evidence that points the finger right back at the family. It's a fundamental conflict.
It's the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, the family member theory versus the intruder theory. And we are going to walk through it all, piece by piece, without picking a side, to see how these two narratives can even exist in the same crime scene.
But to understand why we are still talking about this in 2026, we have to start where it all went wrong. I mean, truly wrong.
From the very first phone call.
We have to start on the morning of December 26, 1996.
Let's set the scene. It's the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, 755 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado. And this is not just any house. It's in a wealthy neighborhood, a big, sprawling Tudor-style home.
Over 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It's a substantial property.
Inside, you have John Ramsey, a very successful businessman, CEO of Access Graphics. You have his wife, Patsy Ramsey, a former Miss West Virginia. And their two kids, 9-year-old Burke and, of course, 6-year-old JonBenét.
And by all accounts, Christmas Day had been festive. They had friends over, they had dinner at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, who had become key figures in this. Everything seemed normal. But the morning of the 26th breaks with absolute chaos.
It starts at 5:52 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Patsy Ramsey makes a 911 call.
And she is frantic, hysterical. The operator can barely understand her.
She reports that her daughter is missing and that she has found a ransom note. And right out of the gate, we have to talk about the tone of this call versus the content of the note.
Yes. At 5:52 a.m., we hit the very first contradiction of the case.
Which is?
The note itself.
We will get into the bizarre content of the note in detail later. It's practically a novel. But there is one specific instruction in that note that stands out immediately.
What it tells them not to do.
Exactly. It explicitly forbade the family from contacting the police or friends. It threatened the child's life if they did.
I have the text here. It says, and this is a direct quote, "Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded." Beheaded. I mean, think about that language. It is terrifying. It is graphic. It essentially says, if I see a cop, your daughter dies.
Yet Patsy calls 911 immediately upon finding the note.
And not just 911. She calls friends. She calls family. The house is about to become, well, Grand Central Station.
So, okay, let's look at this from both sides. If you are looking at this suspiciously, you say, why would you break the kidnapper's one and only rule if you actually thought they had your daughter?
Right. The cynical view is that it feels like you know she's already dead, so the threat doesn't matter.
But if you're a panicked parent, maybe you just instinctively call for help.
Precisely. It's a human reaction versus a logical adherence to a threat. In a moment of absolute trauma, do you read the fine print of a 3-page letter? Or do you grab the phone and scream for the police?
I don't know what I do.
Nobody does. But that call sets off a chain of events that, frankly, doomed the investigation from the start.
2 police officers arrive within 3 minutes. That is an incredibly fast response time.
It is very fast. Officer Rick French and another officer arrive, and they conduct what is described in the reports as cursory search of the house. And this is where we have our first massive what-if moment of the case.
Officer French in the basement.
Yes. Officer Rick French goes down to the basement.
And the basement is huge in this house, right? It's not just one room. I've seen the floor plans. It's a labyrinth. It's full of little storage rooms and winding corridors.
It's a maze. He goes down there, and he comes to a door. It's a white door to a small room, and it's secured by a wooden latch at the top of the frame.
Okay.
Officer French pauses. He looks at the door, but he doesn't open it.
Why not? You're looking for a missing kid. If I'm a cop, I'm kicking open every door in that house. I'm not leaving any stone unturned.
His reasoning was logical at the time,
Yeah.
even if it turned out to be tragic. He saw the latch was on the inside of the door frame, meaning the latch was on the side of the door he was standing on. His logic was that if an intruder had taken JonBenét, they couldn't have exited through that door and latched it behind them from the outside.
Ah, I see. He was looking for an escape route.
He was looking for a way out. He assumed the kidnapper had fled with the child, so he turned around.
And behind that door.
Behind that door was a small, windowless room they called the wine cellar. And as we would find out about 7 hours later, that is where JonBenét's body was lying.
Oh, man. If he just opens that door at 6 a.m., everything changes.
Everything. The entire trajectory of this case is different.
The crime scene is preserved. The timeline is established immediately. The house gets locked down as a murder scene instantly.
Instead, because they didn't find her, the house remains a kidnapping scene. And this distinction is absolutely vital.
Right, because the protocols are totally different.
Completely. In a kidnapping, you need a command center. You need phones. You need people. And this leads to what many experts call the fatal error.
The contamination.
It is breathtaking when you read the reports. Because the police treated it as a kidnapping, they didn't lock down the house. They didn't seal it off. So friends, victim advocates, the family minister, they all started arriving to support the Ramseys.
And they aren't just sitting in the living room, are they?
Oh, no. People are in the kitchen. They are making coffee. They are getting glasses from the cupboards. They are cleaning surfaces.
Wait. They were cleaning up the crime scene.
Unintentionally, yes. Priscilla White, one of Patsy's best friends, reportedly wiped down the kitchen counters with a spray cleaner.
No.
Yes. They were trying to be helpful. The house was chaotic from Christmas. They wanted to be useful, so they started tidying up. But in doing so, they were potentially destroying fingerprints, fibers, trace evidence, everything.
You just want to scream, stop touching things.
And the police didn't stop them. The only room that was cordoned off with crime scene tape was JonBenét's bedroom. The rest of the house was basically a social gathering.
That is just, it's malpractice. I mean, it's frustrating to even read about 30 years later.
It created a defense attorney's dream. Reasonable doubt. Whatever evidence was found later, or not found, could always be challenged because the chain of custody of the scene was broken from minute one.
So if you find a fingerprint later, how do you know it wasn't from one of the 5 friends who were wandering around the kitchen that morning?
You don't. And you can never prove it. And that single failure is arguably why this case has never been prosecuted successfully.
So while the house is filling up with people destroying evidence, the police are focused on this ransom note. And we need to take a deep dive into this note because, honestly, it might be the strangest piece of evidence in American criminal history.
I would agree with that. It is certainly a forensic anomaly. If you study kidnapping cases, you just don't see things like this. It breaks every rule.
Let's look at the physical characteristics first. Where was it found?
It was found by Patsy on the back spiral staircase that led down to the kitchen. Spread out right on the steps.
How long was it?
2.5 pages.
2.5 pages. Handwritten.
Yes. I want you to just pause and think about the logistics of that. In the history of kidnapping cases, ransom notes are typically short, punchy, and functional.
Right. They're like a telegram. We have your child. Pay us X amount. Do not call police. Wait for instructions.
They want to get in and get out. They don't want to spend time composing a novel. The FBI actually told the Boulder police that writing a note of that length at the scene is practically unheard of in criminal profiling.
And we know it was written at the scene. That's a key detail.
We know it was. Because it was written on a notepad from the house, right?
Correct. A legal pad and a Sharpie felt tip pen, both belonging to the Ramseys. In fact, investigators found the notepad with a page torn out, and on the page underneath, they could see indentations from the writing.
And they also found what they believed was a practice draft.
A practice draft. So the killer, or whoever wrote it, started writing, messed up, tore it out or started over, and then wrote 2.5 full pages while the family was asleep upstairs.
That is the implication.
Yeah.
It suggests a level of comfort with the environment that is just chilling. Handwriting experts who have tested this say that just copying the note, not composing it, just writing it out word for word, takes about 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So if this is an intruder, he's sitting in the kitchen for 20 minutes.
At a table, with the lights on, or with a flashlight in his mouth, while the parents and another child are asleep upstairs and the dog is in the house. It's an incredibly high-risk behavior for a burglar or a kidnapper.
It seems almost performative.
It does.
Oh.
And that's before we even get to what's in the note. The money demand is very, very specific. $118,000.
It's a very odd number. It's not a round number. Kidnappers usually ask for round numbers. I want $1 million. I want $500,000. But $118,000, it's so specific.
And John Ramsey pointed out the connection almost immediately, didn't he?
He did. He told police that amount was almost identical to his Christmas bonus from the prior year. I think it was off by just a few dollars.
Which suggests the author knew the family's finances intimately.
Or had access to John's pay stubs. This led investigators to look heavily at employees of Access Graphics. It implies an insider threat, someone who knew exactly how much liquidity John had available.
But then you have the language. It's wild. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction, signed SBTC.
Like 3, SBTC.
It reads like a script. And that's not a coincidence. Linguistic analysis showed heavy borrowing from movie dialogue.
Which movies?
Phrases from the movie, Speed, Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
A lot from Dirty Harry. Also Ransom, and even the comedy Ruthless People.
Don't try to grow a brain, John. Execution. It's so dramatic it feels staged.
That was the immediate conclusion of the Boulder Police Department. They felt the tone shifted too much. It starts with this weirdly polite, "we respect your business," and ends with graphic threats of beheading.
It sounds like someone doing an impression of what they think a terrorist sounds like from watching movies.
Exactly. A small foreign faction in Boulder, Colorado. It just didn't track with reality. And that brings us to the handwriting. This is the battleground. The police looked at one person, Patsy Ramsey.
Why Patsy specifically?
Because it was written on her pad with her pen, and she was the one who said she found it. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, analyzed her handwriting against the note. They got multiple handwriting samples from her.
And what did they find? Was it a match?
It was not a definitive match. They issued a report saying there were indications that the author was Patricia Ramsey. They couldn't rule her out. In the scale of handwriting analysis, she was on the cannot exclude side of the spectrum.
Which isn't the same as saying she wrote it.
Not at all. It's inconclusive.
Yeah.
But the intruder theory supporters have a strong rebuttal to this. It wasn't a slam dunk match by any stretch.
I remember reading a federal court actually reviewed this later on.
They did, in a civil case. They cited 6 certified handwriting experts hired by the Ramseys' legal team who ruled it highly unlikely that Patsy wrote the note. They argued that the police were relying on self-proclaimed experts or were interpreting similarities that are common in many people's handwriting.
So another piece of evidence that points in 2 directions at once.
It's a perfect storm of confusion.
Yeah.
If it's an intruder, they were the most confident, movie-obsessed intruder in history who likes to hang out in the kitchen for half an hour. If it's the family, it's the most elaborate, high-risk staging imaginable.
And while everyone is analyzing this note, assuming JonBenét has been kidnapped, the clock is ticking, the hours are passing. It's now 1 p.m.
7 hours since the 911 call.
7 hours. And Detective Linda Arndt, who is the only detective on the scene at this point because others are out coordinating the kidnapping response.
Which is just incredible in itself. One detective for a high-profile kidnapping.
She makes a decision that has been criticized ever since. She notices John Ramsey looks agitated, pacing. She wants to give him something to do, so she tells him to search the house.
She asks John Ramsey and his friend, Fleet White, to do another search of the house from top to bottom to see if anything seemed amiss.
She tells the dad, a potential suspect in what could be a murder, to search the crime scene.
In hindsight, it looks like a terrible decision. At the time, she was treating him as a victim father whose child was missing. It's a sympathetic move, but a terrible investigative one.
So John and Fleet White go to the basement.
I do. And this time, John goes straight to that white door with the wooden latch.
The one Officer French didn't open that morning.
The very same one. John unlatches it, he opens it, and there she is.
I can't imagine that moment. As a parent, finding your child like that.
It is horrific beyond words. But what happens next is a forensic disaster. John screams, he picks up the body, he carries her upstairs.
Oh, no.
He brings her up from the basement into the living room. He places her on the floor by the Christmas tree.
Don't touch anything.
The white blanket that was covering her torso falls off or is moved. He rips the duct tape from her mouth.
He's a grieving father. He's in shock. Maybe he's trying to revive her.
Of course, it's a human reaction. But from an investigative standpoint, the crime scene is now obliterated. The body has been moved. Clothing has been disturbed. The knot on the wrist bindings is loosened or shifted.
And fibers. I mean, if John is holding her, his fibers are now on her. Patsy throws herself on the body crying. Her fibers are now on her.
Exactly. Any chance of analyzing trace evidence, like a stray fiber from a killer's jacket, is now hopelessly compromised because the parents' fibers are covering the victim. If they find John's fibers on her now, the defense can say, well, of course they are. He picked her up.
It's just one mistake after another.
It is. So now let's talk about the autopsy, because once the shock of the discovery passes, the medical examiner has to tell us how she died. And this is where the kidnapping narrative completely falls apart.
This is where it becomes a clear homicide investigation.
Unequivocally, the official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniothoraciocerebral trauma.
She was strangled and hit on the head.
Yes. And the head wound was not minor. There was a massive skull fracture, an 8.5-inch fracture along the side of her skull. The coroner said it was a blow of tremendous force, like something you'd see in a major car accident or a fall from a great height.
But there wasn't a lot of external blood, right?
Right, there was no bleeding on the scalp, which suggests to some experts she might have been strangled first or hit very shortly after death when the heart wasn't pumping blood anymore. Or she was hit with a blunt object that didn't break the skin.
And the strangulation involved a very specific tool, the garrote.
This is a deeply disturbing piece of evidence. A garrote is a strangulation device. This one was made from a white nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush.
A paintbrush from the house?
Yes. The cord was tied loosely around her neck, then the paintbrush handle was inserted into the knot and used as a handle to twist and tighten it. It's a brutal, deliberate weapon.
And this paintbrush. This connects back to the house, too.
It does. This is critical. The bottom part of that paintbrush, the bristle end, was found in Patsy's art supplies tub in the basement. It was a perfect match to the handle used in the garrote.
So the murder weapon was constructed with materials from inside the house.
That's what the evidence suggests. But here's another mystery. The jagged, broken end of the handle. The little missing piece of wood that would connect the two pieces perfectly.
What about it?
It was never found. Despite the police searching that house top to bottom, sieving the carpets, checking the trash, that little splinter of wood that connected the two pieces was gone.
That is bizarre. If it was made in the house by the parents, why would they hide a splinter of wood so well it's never found? But leave the notepad, the pen, and the rest of the brush right there.
That is a key point for the intruder theory. Investigator Lou Smith argued that maybe the intruder made the device in the basement, the wood splintered, and it got stuck in his glove or his pocket, and he carried it out with him without even realizing it.
It's another detail that just doesn't quite fit either theory perfectly.
And the autopsy found something else. Something small, but something that became a huge point of contention. The pineapple.
Ah, yes. The pineapple.
The medical examiner found partially digested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach and small intestine.
Which means she ate it. When?
Based on the science of digestion rates, gastric emptying, as it's called, it suggests she ate that pineapple likely an hour or two before she died, not long before.
But the parents said she was asleep the whole time.
Correct. Their story consistently was this. They came home from the party at the White's house around 9:30 or 10 p.m. JonBenét had fallen asleep in the car. John carried her up to bed. Patsy changed her into pajamas, and she never woke up.
They said they did not feed her pineapple.
They were adamant about it. But investigators found a bowl of pineapple with a spoon in it on the kitchen table.
A bowl of pineapple?
With a spoon. And this is the kicker on that bowl were Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints. And Burke Ramsey's fingerprints were on the glass next to it.
Okay, let's unpack this. This is the timeline anchor. If the parents say we didn't feed her and she didn't wake up, but her stomach says, I ate pineapple, and the bowl on the table has the mother's prints. That suggests the parents are either lying or mistaken about the timeline.
It strongly suggests she was awake after they got home. It suggests she was downstairs in the kitchen having a snack at a time when the parents said she was sound asleep in bed.
Or, to play devil's advocate, as the intruder theory suggests, maybe the intruder fed her.
But think about that for a second. A kidnapper breaks into a house, and before kidnapping or assaulting the child, he sits her down at the kitchen table and gives her a bowl of pineapple with a spoon.
It seems highly unlikely.
It strains credulity. The pineapple strongly suggests a domestic setting, that she was with someone she knew.
This discrepancy fueled the police suspicion instantly. It made them feel the parents were constructing a narrative that didn't fit the biological facts. And this brings us to the Great Divide. The investigation itself became a war zone.
It really did. You rarely see this level of public infighting in a major criminal case. You had two very distinct, very hostile camps.
The police versus the DA.
The Boulder Police Department, led largely by their suspicion of the parents. They looked at the staging, the note, the lack of forced entry, the pineapple, and they said, this is an inside job, it has to be.
And then you had the district attorney's office.
The DA, Alex Hunter, and his team were much more skeptical of the police's tunnel vision. They felt the police were ignoring credible evidence of an intruder to fit their preferred theory.
And you have these two iconic figures representing the sides. Detective Steve Thomas for the police and investigator Lou Smit for the DA.
It's like a movie. Steve Thomas was the family theory pit bull. He was convinced the Ramseys were guilty. He eventually resigned in frustration, writing a scathing public letter blaming the DA for crippling the case. He even wrote a best-selling book about it.
And Lou Smit?
Lou Smit was a legendary homicide detective from Colorado Springs. He had solved hundreds of murders. He came out of retirement to help. But he resigned, too, for the opposite reason. He blamed the police for ignoring the intruder evidence. He spent the rest of his life working to prove their innocence.
It was total dysfunction. The two agencies supposed to solve the crime wouldn't even talk to each other without arguing.
It was a disaster. But despite the dysfunction, the case did move forward slowly to a grand jury in 1999. And for years, nobody knew what happened in that room.
It was a secret proceeding. But in 2013, a journalist sued and documents were unsealed that revealed a bombshell. The grand jury actually voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey.
They voted to charge them. This changes the whole narrative for a lot of people. The public largely thought the grand jury had cleared them. They did not. They signed what's called a true bill.
But, and this is a critical detail, they did not vote to indict them for murder.
No, not for first-degree murder. The charges were child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime.
What does that actually mean?
Well, the indictment stated that they did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation that posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, and that they helped a person who had committed and was an accessory to the crime of murder.
That sounds like they believe the parents covered it up, but maybe didn't strike the fatal blow, or that they were protecting someone who did.
Exactly. It implies the grand jury believed the Ramseys were protecting someone, or that their negligence or actions allowed the death to happen. It's a charge of complicity, not necessarily of direct action.
But they were never charged. Why? If the grand jury says charge them, why didn't it happen?
Because the district attorney, Alex Hunter, refused to sign the indictment.
He can do that? Just override a grand jury?
He can. He has the ultimate prosecutorial discretion. He looked at the evidence, and he decided he could not prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal trial.
Which is a much higher standard than the probable cause needed for a grand jury to indict.
Correct. Probable cause just means it's more likely than not. Beyond a reasonable doubt means there is no other logical explanation. Hunter knew about the DNA we'll talk about. He knew about the contaminated crime scene. He likely calculated that a good defense team would tear the case apart in court.
And if you lose in court, double jeopardy applies. You can never try them again for that crime.
Exactly. He didn't want to fire his one shot and miss, so he let the case stay open, unsolved.
So let's really dig into the theories that the grand jury and the police were weighing. Let's start with Theory A, the family member theory.
This theory relies heavily on statistics and behavioral analysis. As we mentioned, FBI stats show a high probability of family involvement when a child is killed in the home without obvious forced entry.
And the police saw the whole thing as staged.
Yes. The long ransom note, the garrote made from household items, the lack of footprints in the snow outside, it all felt to them like a performance.
The bedwetting theory was the big one regarding Patsy, right? That was the motive they floated.
Yes. Detective Steve Thomas pushed this hard in his book. The theory was that JonBenét was a chronic bedwetter, which was true. Medical records confirmed it. The theory posits that Patsy, perhaps exhausted, stressed from the holidays, and dealing with yet another wet bed in the middle of the night, snapped.
A fit of rage. A mommy snap.
She strikes the child, perhaps pushing her. She falls and hits her head on something hard, like the side of a tub. Then, in a panic, realizing what's happened, the parents staged the kidnapping to cover it up and protect their reputation and their family.
And the evidence for this is the handwriting on the note, the fibers consistent with her clothes found on the body, and the duct tape, and of course the pineapple bowl with her prints.
Then you have the theory regarding the brother, Burke. He was 9 years old at the time.
This came back into the spotlight big time in 2016 with that CBS documentary, The Case of JonBenét Ramsey.
That documentary gathered a panel of experts who re-examined the evidence, and they theorized that Burke hit his sister with a heavy object, possibly a large Maglite flashlight found on the kitchen counter.
And the motive was supposedly about the pineapple.
Right. The theory was that Burke was downstairs having his snack of pineapple and tea. JonBenét comes down, maybe she steals a piece of his pineapple. A childish argument breaks out. He swings the flashlight in anger and hits her on the head.
An accidental death.
A tragic accident.
Wow.
And the parents wake up to find one child dead and the other responsible. They make a terrible decision to cover up to save their only remaining child. They figure, we've lost one, we can't lose the other, to the criminal justice system.
That is a dark, dark theory. And a huge accusation to level at a 9-year-old boy.
It is. However, we have to be very, very fair here. Burke was interviewed by child psychologists and investigators at least 3 times. The police explicitly stated in 1998 and 1999 that Burke was not a suspect.
And didn't a child psychologist who reviewed the interviews find the family dynamic to be okay?
Yes. They reviewed the family dynamic and found it to be healthy and caring. There was no record of abuse or violent tendencies in Burke. He was, by all accounts, a normal 9-year-old boy.
What about the parents' behavior after the fact? They hire lawyers immediately. I remember the governor of Colorado, Roy Romer, went on TV telling them to quit hiding behind their attorneys.
It looked incredibly suspicious to the public and the police. They didn't submit to formal police interviews for 4 months.
Which seems insane. Your daughter is dead and you won't talk to the police.
But if you look at it from a legal perspective, their defense attorneys would argue that this is exactly what you should do.
How so?
If the police have tunnel vision and are trying to pin a murder on you that you didn't commit, you don't go into an interrogation room without a lawyer. You protect yourself. You communicate through counsel. As unpopular as it was, hiring top-tier legal defense is a rational move when you're the #1 suspect, not necessarily proof of guilt.
Okay, that's the family case in a nutshell. But now we have to pivot, because for everything we just said, the note, the pineapple, the behavior, there is a single piece of hard physical evidence that simply does not fit. Let's talk about Theory B, the intruder.
This is where the hard stack gets really, really difficult for the family theory proponents. It starts and it ends with DNA.
The underwear.
Yes. In 2003, after years of trying, forensic investigators finally extracted a usable DNA profile from a mixed blood sample found on JonBenét's underwear.
Let's be specific about where it was found. This wasn't just a smudge on the outside.
No. It was found in the crotch area of the underwear. It was a mixture of JonBenét's blood DNA and the DNA of an unknown male contributor.
And who did it belong to?
It was not John Ramsey. It was not Burke Ramsey. It was not anyone in the Ramsey family. It was run against hundreds of other people who'd been in the house. It matched none of them. It was a stranger.
And they ran this through CODIS, the National FBI database.
They did, and have continued to do so over the years. No match. Which means the person, if they are in the U.S., had not been convicted of a felony that required their DNA to be put on file.
Then, years later, the technology got even better, touch DNA.
Right, in 2008, the DA's office, led by Mary Lacey at the time, decided to retest the waistband of her long johns, the clothing she was wearing over the underwear. And they used a new, more sensitive method to scrape for skin cells.
And what did they find?
They found the same unknown male DNA profile.
The same guy.
The same guy. So you have the same unknown male's genetic material mixed with her blood in her underwear and on the waistband of her pants. That is compelling. It is extremely compelling. It is biological proof that a stranger was in physical contact with her clothing in the intimate areas where the assault took place. This is what led District Attorney Mary Lacey to publicly exonerate the Ramseys in 2008.
She wrote them a letter, didn't she?
She wrote a formal letter of apology to John Ramsey. She said the DNA evidence in her mind cleared the family and proved an intruder was responsible.
But if there was an intruder, how did they get in? The police said there was no forced entry. All the doors were locked.
This is a major sticking point. Lou Smith, the legendary detective who supported the intruder theory, pointed to the basement. There was a broken window in the train room.
But didn't John break that window himself months earlier when he was locked out of the house?
He did. He admitted that. He'd never gotten around to fixing it. But Smith argued it was an open point of entry. The glass was broken out. The latch was undone. It was an unlocked door, essentially.
What about the suitcase?
They found a hard-sided suitcase standing on its end directly beneath that window. Smith theorized the intruder used the suitcase as a step to get back out of the window after the crime. There was a scuff mark on the wall above it that looked like a shoe print.
But the cobwebs. I always hear about the cobwebs.
The Battle of the Cobweb. The police noted that there was an intact spider web in the corner of the window frame. They argued an adult couldn't have crawled through that window without breaking the web.
Which suggests it hadn't been used.
Smith argued the window was open enough to bypass it, or the web was in a corner that wasn't disturbed. It became a battle of inches and angles. There were also other potential entry points, like an unsecured door, but nothing was ever proven.
So we have this phantom DNA. What about suspects? If it was an intruder, who was it? Did they have anyone?
They looked at dozens, if not hundreds. There was Santa Bill McReynolds, a neighbor who had played Santa Claus for the family party and had a somewhat odd connection to JonBenét. His own daughter had been abducted years before.
He was cleared.
He was cleared. There was the housekeeper, Linda Hoffman Pugh, who owed the Ramseys money. She was cleared. They looked at a man named Gary Oliva, who was a known sex offender in the area. His DNA didn't match.
And then the guy who actually confessed, John Mark Carr.
That was a media circus in 2006. He was an American teacher living in Thailand. He was arrested after exchanging emails with a journalism professor, and he claimed he was there, that he loved her, that he drugged her and accidentally killed her.
It was a huge international story. I remember them flying him back to the U.S.
They did. But his story had massive holes. He claimed he drugged her, but the autopsy toxicology report showed absolutely no drugs in her system. She wasn't drugged.
And the DNA.
They rushed his DNA to the lab. It did not match the unknown male profile on the underwear.
So a false confession from a disturbed individual seeking attention.
Exactly. The DA declined to charge him. He was a fantasist. And that brings us back to square one. We have a body with DNA that belongs to a ghost.
The aftermath of this case has been just as messy as the investigation. It turned into a legal war.
The defamation lawsuits are a key part of the story. Lynn Wood, the family's attorney, went on the offensive. They sued Star Magazine, the New York Post, and others who printed headlines calling Burke or the parents murderers.
And they won, or settled, right.
They obtained dismissals or settlements in almost every single case. And usually, to win a libel suit, you have to prove the statement is false. The courts have often ruled that the evidence supports the intruder theory more than the family theory.
Judge Carnes, right.
Yes. In a 2003 federal case involving a defamation suit against the Ramseys, Judge Julie Carnes reviewed the entire case file. She wrote a 93-page summary judgment stating that there was abundant evidence to support the intruder theory and that the plaintiff had failed to show the parents were involved.
That's a federal judge looking at all the police files and saying, it looks like an intruder.
It's a powerful statement, and Burke Ramsey even sued CBS over that 2016 documentary you mentioned.
The one that accused him of killing his sister.
He sued CBS and the experts on the panel for $750 million. That is a massive number. The case was settled out of court in 2019 to the satisfaction of all parties. We don't know the amount, but the fact that a major network settled suggests their legal team knew they had a significant liability problem. It shows you cannot just go on TV and accuse someone without hard proof.
So where do we stand now, today in 2026? Patsy Ramsey passed away in 2006 from ovarian cancer. She never saw the case solved.
She died with the cloud of suspicion still over her head, 2 years before the DA's DNA exoneration letter. John Ramsey is still alive. He is remarried. He has spent decades trying to find the killer, pushing for new DNA technology like genetic genealogy to be used on the sample.
And the police. What's the official status?
In 2009, the Boulder police took the case back from the DA's office. They reopened it as a cold case, and it remains an open and active homicide investigation to this day.
But didn't the police chief walk back that exoneration letter from the DA?
He did. In 2016, then Chief Mark Beckner gave an interview where he admitted mistakes were made in the beginning, the contaminated crime scene. But he also said that exonerating the entire family based solely on that small piece of touch DNA was absurd.
Absurd, that's a strong word.
His argument, and the argument of many in law enforcement, is that the DNA could be transfer DNA, contamination.
Meaning it was there before the crime.
Right. Maybe it came from the factory where the underwear was made. Maybe it came from a worker in the packaging plant.
Is that actually possible?
It is scientifically possible. It's called innocent transfer. If a factory worker in Asia sneezed on a piece of fabric and that DNA survived the packaging, the shipping, the purchase, it could theoretically end up on the clothing.
But found in two places, mixed with blood in the underwear and on the waistband of the long johns.
That is where the transfer theory gets very, very weak. The odds of the same innocent contamination happening on two different layers of clothing are astronomical, but it's not zero. So the police refocus the attention back on the totality of the evidence, the note, the pineapple, the lack of footprints in the snow outside.
So the DNA clears them the eyes of the DA and the courts, but the police say, not so fast.
And that is the stalemate we have been in for over a decade.
It's incredibly frustrating. You want an answer. You want to be able to say it was the parents or it was an intruder, but the facts simply refuse to cooperate.
This is the synthesis we had to leave you with today. The case is caught in a loop because the evidence supports two completely contradictory realities.
It is the pineapple versus DNA paradox.
Precisely. The pineapple sits in her stomach as biological proof of a timeline that contradicts the parents' sworn account. It suggests they are hiding something about that night. Why lie about a simple snack?
But the DNA sits on her clothing as biological proof of an unknown male's presence at the heart of the crime.
And those two facts have never been reconciled, unless the intruder fed her pineapple, highly unlikely. Or unless the DNA is an innocent transfer, also highly unlikely.
So you have to choose which highly unlikely scenario you believe.
Exactly. You are choosing between an impossible intruder and an impossible conspiracy. There is no easy answer.
Here's a provocative thought to end on. We always ask who wrote the note. We obsess over the handwriting, the movie quotes, the SBTC. But I want to ask you, the listener, this. If that DNA had matched a known convict in 1997, let's say a local burglar with a record of similar crimes, would we even care about the ransom note?
No, we wouldn't. We would say, oh, the burglar wrote a weird long note to try and throw off the police. We would ignore the length, the movie quotes, the bonus amount. We would convict him based on the DNA and move on. The note would just be a bizarre footnote.
Exactly. We only obsess over the note because we don't have a suspect to attach it to, so the note becomes the prime suspect.
Or is the DNA a red herring? Has a tiny speck of unrelated, innocently transferred genetic material allowed a domestic killer to hide in plain sight for 30 years? Is the DNA the ultimate accidental alibi?
That is the question that haunts Boulder. And until that DNA is finally matched, or someone on their deathbed confesses, the ghost of JonBenét Ramsey will continue to wait for justice.
And we will continue to wonder.
That's it for this deep dive. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week with another stack of sources. Stay curious.
And stay critical.